Together, growing in faith, changing communities.
Together, growing in faith, changing communities. My dear brothers and sisters, I love today's gospel account. I think it's quite beautiful and it's rich in theology. And I think it's rich in its meaning in our lives even today. From the beginning of its all, from the creation of its all, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. If you go to the book of Genesis, it is the book of the beginnings, of how everything came into existence. You'll find that while everything was chaotic and the Spirit of God was hovering over, there was something that was very stable. That was the Word of God. And that Word of God was the creative power. It is through that Word that God created everything. And I like what I'm talking about. While everything was chaotic, there was only one thing that was stable. That was the Word of God. Today doesn't feel like Christmas. For many reasons. And we are faced, as I was reflecting this morning, we are faced not only as individually having to reflect about the reality of death, but as a community, as a country, as a people, as the universe. We have to reflect about death. And so a lot of things are chaotic. They don't make sense. The mood is absolutely bleak. Our experiences are reminding us that no one is guaranteed of anything. But there's one thing that remains constant: the Word of God. And that's what I want us to go back to. That no matter what goes on in your life, no matter what is happening, there's one thing that remains constant. That's the Word of God. Whether the Word of God in the Scriptures, whether the Word of God in the sacrament, whether the Word of God in Jesus Christ, being born in Bethlehem, being born as a king, being born as a child, he remains constant. And I think it is important for us to find an anchor and a pillar in Jesus. Because when everything else does not make sense, our faith in God has to hold the center. And so I go back and I say, in the beginning of its all, the Word of God was always there. The Word of God was always creative. But the Word of God has always been God, continues to be God, and will always be God. There's another thing that also speaks to me. In Him was life. And this life was the light of people. There are two concepts in here. The first one is that the Word of God is full of life. The Word of God brings light. Now, I want to believe and I want to accept that each and every one of us are longing for the gift of life. to be alive, to be active, not just to survive, but to live the best of our lives, to celebrate that which God has given us. One of the greatest church fathers, Tertullian, he says the glory of God is found in a human person fully alive and fully divine. And so the Word of God wants to give us the gift of life. Jesus reminds us today, as we celebrate Christmas, that He is God of life, that He wants to enter into our own existence, that He wants to give us that which we need the most. I was reading a post today or yesterday, and somebody says, talking to Santa Claus, not that I believe in Santa Claus, he says, for Christmas, I don't want anything, I just want to go back to the normal life. I want to go back to the world that is full of life. I want to go back to the world that is healthy. I want to go back to the world where people are not dying like animals. That's what Jesus says to us today. He is the God of life. And so part of our obligation, part of our responsibility is to cooperate with God and ensure this gift of life. But how does that happen for us? By taking care of yourself. By looking after your own life. By changing your lifestyle. By not taking things for granted. And making a decision not to be selfish. In realizing that if I love my life and I love those around me, I need to protect them. That's what God is asking of us today. When He talks about life, He speaks of life of every person, from a child in the womb to an elderly person sitting or lying down. All of us are created in an image and likeness of God. The other concepts that I like, he says this life is the light to people. Therefore, He comes to enlighten us. He comes to take us out of darkness. He wants us to remain in His light. What sort of darkness are you living in? What sort of darkness am I living in? What is it in my life that needs to change? What is it in my life that pulls me down, that refuses for me to grow? What is it in my life that allows me to be selfish? How do I become a light to those around me? How do I instill the principles of God? How do I let them celebrate the beauty of our faith? There was a man who was sent from God. He came to give witness to the light. but he himself was not the light. I like that concept. You and I are like when you're traveling on the road. You see a signpost that says, if you want to go to Porshepston, you're left with 60 kilometers. Or if you go into Durban, you are left with 75 kilometers. Those are signposts. They are not an end in themselves. They are a means to an end. They give us direction. And that's what I think we are called to be that. We are called to be signposts to people, to lead them to Christ. I am not Jesus. You are not Jesus. But we have fallen in love with Christ. And so our lives should permeate and should radiate the mercy, the love, and the forgiveness of God. If we ever needed good Christian living, we need it today. The world is hurting. People are giving up. Life has become unbearable. This is now when we need Christian living, genuine Christian values. It is now where we need to remind the world of the love of God, of the mercy of God. It is now where we as Christians are called to live out that which God has demanded of our lives. And so we need to bear witness in our families, in our neighborhoods, amongst our friends and colleagues. It is now that we need to remind them that God continues to be the ultimate option in our lives. The other thing that also touches my life is what John says about Jesus. He says Jesus is the true light that enlightens every person. He is enlightening every person. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. I was reflecting a couple of days ago, and I said, there's only one reason why the church exists. All the other reasons are not important. The church exists only for one reason: to evangelize, to make Jesus known in the world. All the other things are secondary. My job, your job, is to introduce people into a personal relationship with Jesus. That's the only job. Go back to the greatest commission. Go out, therefore, proclaim the good news. That's what Jesus wants us to do, to bring light into the world, to enlighten people, men and women, young and old, about Jesus. Our job is to preach Christ crucified. Our job is to lead people into the word of life. Our job is to give people another alternative. We know what's going on outside, and we know what God is offering. The other thing that also speaks to me, he came into the world that he created, but the world did not receive him. He came to his own, but his own rejected him. How do you deal with rejection? How do you deal with your own rejection? Now we see Jesus, who himself who created everything, was rejected by the very same creation he created. It's like ukulisingane. Uma sikhulile sekumele ibonakala ukuthi seyiyasebenza kube yiyona ekuphenduke nayo. But we still find him loving us even though we've rejected him. He came to his own family, his own people rejected him. How do I learn to continue when everything is against me? The other thing that speaks to me is verse 14. The Word became flesh and lived among us, and we saw his glory. What does Christmas really mean? It's about God becoming one of us. That's the real Christmas story. It's about God coming into your life, coming into your situation. I don't know how your life looks like today. I don't know how it has looked like in this couple of months. I don't know how many you've lost. I don't know how great and how grievous the blows have been in your life. But Christmas is about Jesus entering into that life. Jesus is not found in the churches only. He's found in our homes, in our lives, in our situations. Sometimes, I remember as growing up as children, we were made to believe that as we prepare for Christmas, we must paint the house and clean the house and make sure everything is ready, because Christmas was coming. And we did that so well. And we've also done it in our lives, and we went for confession, blah, 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 and all those things. And we forgot that we were only lying to ourselves. Jesus has been in life, has been involved in our lives, messy as they were, broken as they were, and he wants to come and stay there. Sometimes uJesu mefike empilweni zethu sifuna ukumkhiphela lamabhodwe nalezi zitsha ezisetshenziswa ngoKhisimusi kuphela. Sikhohle ukuthi uJesu akanendaba nazo zonke lezo zinto. He wants you as you are. He wants to come to the broken life, to the miserable life, to a hurting life, to a person that you are. And that's what Christmas is all about. God coming into your life and helping you to navigate through the storm.